Hello, and welcome to week 50 of the Literary Lutheran Reads the Book of Concord. Today we're continuing to go through Article 8, the Person of Christ, from the Solid Declaration of the Formula of Concord. The divine and human nature have this personal union with each other in the person of Christ and have the communion resulting from it in deed and truth. For this reason there is attributed to Christ, according to the flesh, what is flesh, according to its nature and essence, cannot be by itself. Apart from this union, his flesh cannot have these attributes. His flesh is a truly life-giving food, and his body a truly life-giving drink. John chapter 6, verse 55. The 200 fathers of the Council of Ephesus have testified that Christ's flesh is a life-giving flesh. Therefore, this man only and no man besides, either in heaven or on earth, can say with truth, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am among them. Matthew chapter 18, verse 20. Also, and behold, I am with you always, to the end of the age. Matthew chapter 28, verse 20. We do not understand these testimonies to mean that only Christ's divinity is present with us in the Christian church and congregation, and that such presence does not apply to Christ according to his humanity in no way whatever. For in that way Peter, Paul, and all the saints in heaven, since divinity, which is everywhere present, dwells in them, would also be with us on earth. However, the Holy Scriptures say this only about Christ and no other man. We hold that by these words the majesty of the man Christ is declared. The Christ has received this majesty according to his humanity at the right hand of God's majesty and power. So also, according to his received human nature, and with the same, he can be, and also is, present where he wants to be. He is present especially in his church and congregation on earth as mediator, head king, and high priest. This presence is not a part or only one half of him. Christ's entire person is present, to which both natures belong, the divine and the human, not only according to his divinity, but also according to and with his received human nature. He is our brother, Hebrews chapter 2, verse 17, and we are flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone, Genesis chapter 2, verse 23. He has instituted his holy supper for the certain assurance and confirmation of this, so that he will be with us and dwell, work, and be effective in us also according to that nature from which he has flesh and blood. Upon this firm foundation, Dr. Luther, of blessed memory, has also written about Christ's majesty according to his human nature. In the Confession concerning Christ's supper, he writes this about the person of Christ. Now, since he, Christ, is a man who is supernaturally one person with God, and apart from this man there is no God, it must follow that according to the third supernatural mode, he is and can be wherever God is, and that everything is full of Christ through and through, even according to his humanity, not according to the first corporeal circumscribed mode, but according to the supernatural divine mode. Here you must take your stand and say that wherever Christ is according to his divinity, he is there as a natural divine person, and he is also naturally and personally there, as his conception in his mother's womb proves conclusively. For if he was the Son of God, he had to be in his mother's womb naturally and personally and become man. But if he is present naturally and personally wherever he is, then he must be man there too, since he is not two separate persons, but a single person. Wherever this person is, it is a single, indivisible person, and if you can say, here is God, then you must also say, Christ the man is present too. And if you could show me one place where God is and not the man, then the person is already divided, and I could at once say truthfully, here is God who is not man and has never become man. But no God like that for me. For it would follow from this that space and place had separated the two natures from one another, and thus had divided the person, even though death and all the devils had been unable to separate and tear them apart. This would leave me a poor sort of Christ, if he were present only at one single place as a divine and human person, and if at all other places he had to be nothing more than a mere isolated God and a divine person without the humanity. No, comrade, wherever you place God for me, you must also place a humanity for me. They simply will not let themselves be separated and divided from each other. He has become one person and does not separate the humanity from himself. In his treatise on the last words of David, which Dr. Luther wrote shortly before his death, he says the following: according to the second, the temporal, human birth, Christ was also given the eternal dominion of God, yet temporarily and not from eternity. From the human nature of Christ was not from eternity as his divine nature was. It is computed that Jesus, Mary's son, is 1,543 years old this year. But from the moment when deity and humanity were united in one person, the man, Mary's son, is and is called Almighty, Eternal God, who has eternal dominion, who has created all things and preserves them through the communication of attributes, because he is one person with the Godhead and is also very God. Christ refers to this in Matthew chapter 11:27, where he says, all things have been delivered to me by my Father. And in Matthew chapter 28, verse 18, he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. To which me? To me, Jesus of Nazareth, Mary's incarnate son. I had this from my Father from eternity before I became man. But when I became man, it was imparted to me in time according to my human nature, and I kept it concealed until my resurrection and ascent into heaven, when it was to be manifested and glorified. Thus St. Paul declares in Romans chapter 1, verse 4, he was glorified, or designated Son of God in power. John speaks of this as being glorified in chapter 7, verse 39. Similar testimonies are found in Dr. Luther's writings, but especially in the book That These Words Still Stand Firm, and in the Confession Concerning Christ's Supper. To these writings, as well-grounded explanation of Christ's majesty at God's right hand, and of his testament, we have referred for the sake of brevity. We have referred to them in this article as well as in the Holy Supper, as has been mentioned before. This has been the Literary Lutheran Reads the Book of Concord, and I wish you a blessed evening.